What I mean by hyper Australia is just more Australia. I think we've got the greatest country in the world, and we've built something quite amazing. I mean,
Hello and welcome to the show. On my recent live stream, the Death and Taxes live stream with John Humphreys, we had Senator Matt Canavan join us. Matt leads the Nationals. He's a senator from Queensland, and before politics, he worked as an economist. Indeed, I knew Matt when he was an economist in Canberra with the Productivity Commission. I was in Treasury. We were friends, and I mean, we still are friends. Matt is he's a great guy. He's a big thinker, and it's good to have him on the show this week to talk about some of the big ideas he has for regional development. Now, a lot of the conversation was political. John and I were asking Matt about the existential threat to his party from One Nation. I'm not going to feature any of that conversation in this episode. What I want to feature in this Economics Explored episode is the underlying economics. So his economic ideas behind his pitch, what he calls hyper Australia. Now, this is a concept that he got from one of his children. If we take away the branding, it's about the economics of place, and that's what we're going to be covering this episode. So we're going to start with a puzzle. A disproportionate amount of Australia's economy is concentrated in a handful of capital cities, and this concentration is extreme by world standards, and we're starting to feel the strain of it. Our big cities are increasingly congested, commutes are getting longer, housing costs in Sydney, increasingly in Brisbane, they're getting to a point where they're hard to defend. I mean, probably, well, they've been past that point for a long time. But yes, it's just extremely challenging for people living in those capital cities now, certainly compared with 10 years ago, 20 and 30, back in the 90s, for those of us who can remember that. So whatever the benefits there are of bigger cities, and there certainly are real ones, we talk about agglomeration economies, so there's certainly benefits from more people in an area, it increases productivity. There's that hothouse effect. You've got the capacity for greater specialization, greater diversification, and that brings productivity gains. So we're not going to deny that, but we're going to be considering, well, what are the benefits of more decentralization, of say, moving people to the region? So this is one of the aspects of what Matt is pitching that I find really interesting. And I think it's one reason to take Matt's pitch seriously is that in Australia, we do have this disproportionate economic concentration within a handful of capital cities. So our capital cities, they're both the political capital and the commercial capital in the states. I'm not talking about Canberra, of course, which is just a political capital, really, rather than a commercial capital of anything. But we've got Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Hobart to a lesser extent. Hobart's probably more of a big country town, but that's where the parliament sits. It's also where the head offices are, the port, the airport, the university, so they all cluster there. Now, if we compare our Australian capital cities with the United States, we find that in the US, the political capital is often not the commercial capital. So, for example, we have New York as the commercial capital of New York, so New York City is the capital, and not as the commercial capital, and Albany as the political capital. In California, you have Los Angeles, San Francisco, the Bay Area, but the capital is Sacramento. Okay, so there are other examples of that we don't need to go into, but the point is that this is something that we don't tend to have in Australia. So we tend to have a lot of economic development just naturally clustering around the capital cities because that's where the action is, that's where the political leaders And that's where the businesses want to locate so that they can deal with the relevant people in government. Okay, so last week we looked at how we tax and spend. This week is a different question. Where does economic growth happen, and who gets to decide? What levers are available? And we'll go through it in stages. We'll consider whether we can even properly, to what extent have we got good visibility on the regional disadvantage? That's something I'm concerned about, the amount of data we've got. We'll talk about the funding mechanisms for regional Australia versus the city, what public investment may be necessary to open the country up. Are we talking about dams? Are we talking about roads? What infrastructure? We'll talk about moving people in and out, well, moving people from the city to the country. And I'll come back to this issue of how much of our concentration is efficient. Is it an efficient outcome, or is there scope for decentralisation? Now, I think Matt makes a good case for his Hyper Australia, for his decentralisation and regional development, and I think it's worth listening to. Of course, we have to consider it through as economists and think about whether this stacks up. Does it pass the cost benefit analysis test? So this is one thing I'll be considering in this episode. Righto, let's get into it. So we'll first play a clip from the live stream on this regional disconnect. Just on the regional government, or perhaps new states, I think definitely there is that disconnect. I mean, I think certainly in the capital cities we possibly lose touch with the regions, and this may be a bit esoteric, but one issue is the cost of living, for example. So I'm hearing from my colleagues in regional Australia or regional Queensland just how much worse the cost of living concerns are up north, say around Cairns, Townsville. And so we're going to be having a cost of living summit for Economic Society up there in a couple of months or so. But they would like a regional CPI. Why don't we have a regional CPI rather than just focusing on capital city prices? Like, that's one thing we could have. Try and establish what those price differences are. We just don't have the data to be able to tell that story. So that's one aspect of it.
That's a great point. I know various state governments have tried, I think, at times to do quasi sort of shopping basket sort of thing, and they do always show that in certain, particularly those more remote regional communities, it's stark. And with when inflation occurs like it has, those differences are going to widen. Wages are set centrally across our whole country, of course, and therefore don't take account necessarily of those differences as well. It's been very hard for lots of these areas. And obviously things like fuel and transport, that just makes things worse.
Yep. Okay, so that clip, that raises the question about the visibility we have on regional disadvantage, on regional issues. If we can't even see these issues properly in the data, that's a concern. Now, the next problem we're going to be considering is the machinery which decides where the money flows and whether it's tilted toward the cities or the regions. And this is controversial, and at different times, depending on who's in government, you may come up with different answers. What I find interesting about this clip is that Matt has identified a new mechanism that I didn't know about before, where he claims that there's been a change in the methodology for determining grants to the states through the Commonwealth Grants Commission that is disadvantaging the region. So I think this is a really interesting and really insightful line of analysis by Senator Canavan. So let's check it out now.
Yeah, I guess another little one that's worth noting, I imagine you'd agree with this anyway, when people are looking at infrastructure, there is a disproportionate amount given to public transport in the cities and relatively less given to roads, because a lot of people outside the 5 big cities aren't catching a bus or train everywhere. They need their roads. They don't appreciate the modern war on cars, the modern war on petrol, and being able to drive in an hour into the local shops or into work or wherever you need to go. So roads versus public transport. Just quickly on New State.
Well, can I just say one thing about that? One thing a lot of people have missed in recent years, I don't know if you guys have missed it, but the Commonwealth Grants Commission, I think probably 7 or 8 years ago, changed their formula such that those subsidies, massive subsidies given to public transport, they now get factored in. So if you've got a large public transport network that you massively subsidise, you get more of the GST to help pay for that. And so while it's intrastate, not interstate, effectively, states are incentivised now to, like Queensland, have 50-cent fares, like Victoria at the moment, give free public transport, and they get subsidised by the rest of the country by us poor saps creating the wealth. And certainly a lot of the coal wealth, the gas wealth, the iron ore wealth gets redistributed through that process to subsidise the preferences of capital city commuters in our inner cities.
Well, that's also just a problem with it. The GST carve-up subsidises inefficient governments and punishes efficient governments for the crime of their productivity and efficiency. But that's a different rant, maybe for a different day.
Okay, so I thought that was a great insight of Matt's about how the institutional arrangements that we have in place could be directing dollars inefficiently or sending too many public dollars to the cities rather than the country. I thought that was a really interesting analysis from Matt, and I wasn't aware of that point previously. It's something I want to look at more closely just to make sure I understand it. So that's what's happening due to the existing mechanisms by default. Now, if you look at what Matt's proposing with Hyper Australia, he's proposing that the government gets more interventionist, that it starts leading regional economic development, pushing funding to regional Australia to build it up to promote economic development. And this is going back to the model of the Queensland governments of the 70s and 80s, led by Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen, very controversial premier. There was significant corruption at the time. However, the government was very effective at developing Queensland at the time in terms of building up the resources sector, helping that build up, and there was support for agriculture too, for irrigated agriculture. You could ask whether all of those investments stacked up. I mean, I think this is one of the areas where this approach, this Hyper Australia approach, is particularly vulnerable. This issue of the economics of it. Now, this is something I asked Matt about, and I think Matt makes a good defence. I think this is worth listening to, where we're talking about one of the types of investments that would feature prominently, I expect, in his Hyper Australia investments in irrigation dams. So let's listen to my question and Matt's response to it. I just want to go back to your Hyper Australia. You mentioned dams. I take it you mean irrigation dams. What are your plans regarding new irrigation dams, and how will you get around this concern about the economics of these dams? We've seen say Rookwood Weir. I mean, looking at the benefit cost analysis that was done for building Queensland, it looked pretty marginal. And now we've got, even though I know Paradise Dam is a great resource for the Bundaberg region, we now see the expected cost is $4 billion, which is just, an extraordinary cost. So how are you going to manage those concerns?
Well, look, when we were in government last, we put funds towards dam building because I think opening up new farming areas and creating new areas of economic opportunity are important national interests. So it will come at a cost. And some of these projects may not meet a strict benefit cost estimate benchmark from a purely economic question, but goes to that family question as we were talking about before. I think it's very important that we move out from just Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And to do that, we need to create jobs opportunities and create wealth outside our regions. And looking back then on dams that we've built in the past, apart from Paradise, which has certainly had its issues, most of what we've built has been amazingly successful. I mean, I've just spent the last couple
Right.
of months in Farrer, Farrer by-election. It's at the heart of the Murray-Darling system, where we built the Burrinjuck Dam, the Hume Weir, Blowering Dam, like all of these dams for that area that have opened up. Like Griffith, if you go to Griffith, there's a town of 25,000 people.
Yep.
Amazing, amazing place. Amazing innovation comes out of there. The heart of our food production, our country. Amazingly diverse, multicultural place. It's just fantastic community. Uh, uh, that wouldn't be there without those dams. It was just desert before. So these things do work. Like, I know I'm not saying we just go ahead and just build dams without considering the cost. Obviously, we need to weigh it up. And you're right, the Rookwood Weir was a bit marginal, but I tell you what, it's been very, very successful already. 800,000 macadamia trees are being grown right now, just west of where I am, thanks to the Rookwood Weir. And the water was taken up more. I'd say, compared to those estimates in the study, the demand for water, the investments unleashed have been greater than what was expected. So that's another sign that these things can work. But we haven't put money into that. The federal government put money into that. I think we should look at Urana and Hell's Gate as well. There's so much water up here in Northern Australia, and we could do what we've done in Murray-Darling elsewhere. I'll say one more thing. We have to, with the things like the Murray-Darling, we need to reinvest in those. A lot of those dams I mentioned are coming up to 100 years. Hume Weir was built Burrinjuck was built almost 100 years ago now, and as it reaches those end of life, we need to upgrade and invest in those. Otherwise, we lose our food bowl. And in these challenging times, I think growing food too and having food security is important as well.
Yep. Okay, so in that clip, we were talking about the promotion of investment, of infrastructure investment in the regions. That's one aspect of this regional economic development, this decentralisation. Another aspect is getting people to move to the regions, and whether there is a role for relocating public servants to the regions. And so earlier I was talking about how, the capital cities have the advantage that that's where the government is located, and so there's a disproportionate number of public servants in those capitals, which provides significant economic advantages relative to other parts of the states. So what we're going to be talking about in this clip, is whether there's a policy to actively push public servants to the region. So let's check it out.
A question from Taylor, regular listener. Would your party decentralise federal government jobs to the regional hubs, not just technical hands-on roles, but business systems, analysts, policy officers, etc.? I love the question. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. We did do a little bit of that in government. We moved the APVMA to Armidale. And it was Barnaby Joyce. He did his best work as a member and leader of the Nationals Party. I did set up the NAIF up in Cairns. It was a Northern Australian infrastructure facility. So there were some people, though, who wanted to put it in Canberra or in Brisbane, but no, it got put in Cairns. I think we should do more about that. I did just speak this morning at a defence summit in Townsville about the importance of putting defence industry jobs where our defence forces actually are. 90% of our army personnel are in Northern Australia, and that's a good thing, but the vast majority of our equipment, our maintenance, our industry that support those pieces of kit are not near there. And that does, I think, lead to some capability issues. Phil Thompson, our shadow defence industry spokesperson, he's former military, great guy. He makes this point to me regularly. So it makes sense to do that. Just one example of that, we've got our armoured personnel carriers stuck in Nogra. They sit there 10 kilometres from the CBD of Brisbane. They can't be used. Obviously, you can't take them out down Queen Street and fire them off. Obviously, they have to come up to a place called Shoalwater Bay, which is near where I am, very close to where I am right now. So they come up and down the Bruce. I asked about this to the Senator a few years ago. It costs us $35 million a year to transport these things up and down the Bruce Highway. They do damage to the roads. Why not just leave them up here? We've got heaps of space up here. They could probably be parked in Rocky, and you could have the mechanics and everybody here. Plenty of room here, great lifestyle here, and it would be a 30-minute run out to their training grounds. But anyway, it's hard. It's hard to get people to move. It's very hard to get defence personnel to move. Let's just say that.
Well, defense personnel have to move a lot. You probably don't know this, but I'm now barracked, stationed at Enoggera, joining the Army Reserve. So don't take away my
Oh, right.
toys.
You'll be
I
up
don't
there.
want to
You'll
play
be
with those.
coming up to Rock Vegas before you know it, John.
But the other benefit is if you take all the bureaucrat jobs from all the other line agencies and just move them en masse to somewhere they don't want to go, well, then they all quit, and then you've
Look,
got a smaller
one thing
public
I
service.
didn't mention is, look, we do have the work from home thing too now, right? And I've embraced that. I was very against that before COVID and enforced that as a minister, made people move to the regions. So we're happy about that. But look, we got it now. I suppose we should embrace it, particularly given this decentralisation thing I mentioned. So, yeah, there could be ways of incentivising the public service to be out of Canberra and live in these regions, help take pressure off our major cities, and bring a different perspective. There's no doubt in my mind the other advantage here is when you live in a regional area, it does change your whole mindset. I've seen that many times.
Also, if there's a guaranteed set of sort of high-paid people in these towns, it creates an incentive to build the coffee shops and everything
Yes,
else that goes with it, and
absolutely.
allows the regional towns to grow. And of course, you can't say this, and you probably have to shake your head very sternly when I say it. But wouldn't it be a shame if a lot of those bureaucrats quit their job and we had a smaller public service because of it?
Okay, so there we were talking about relocating public servants within the existing governments that we have, so moving them around. Another idea that comes up from time to time is the idea of creating new states, new regional governments, and then so we could have, say, a capital city in Townsville or Rockhampton, and then they can become larger administrative centres and attract people. So this is an idea that gets thrown around from time to time, and one advantage of it would be greater competitive federalism. So you could have a situation where you have states adopting significantly different tax or regulatory settings, and then having the competition between states for people. So people move vote with their feet, so to speak, and that could deliver benefits in terms of economic benefits and also social benefits. You can go to a state where you're more sympathetic to the policy settings. So I think that's a fascinating idea. We've got a clip that's slightly abridged. I've made at least one cut to it, but we've got a clip where we cover those issues. So let's check it out.
So yeah, I was saying when I was a kid, Joe was lowering taxes, lowering red tape, and he sort of because he had to, because Brisbane had to grow. We had to grow to survive as a state, and we attracted lots of investment on the back of that. We also played that role in a competitive federalism environment where other states had to get rid of their taxes just to stop the outflow of investment to Queensland. We don't really have anywhere doing that right now, right? And it's really sad because there's so many parts of our country that could develop. But once you get to be a big city and you've got congestion and public transport and all these issues, people generally demand a bigger state, a bigger government to tackle those issues. Okay, fair enough. That's their preference. But it leaves us poor suckers that don't have those same issues facing much higher regulation, much higher red tape. So, we've got these things like EPBC Act, and as I've joked many times before, if only the Aboriginals realised that all they needed to do to stop the British was to have an EPBC Act, Sydney would never have been built, right? It never would have been built. You walk down Tank Street in Sydney, you are walking over the Tank Stream. There used to be a stream, a watercourse under that road that fed the Sydney Basin, completely destroyed by building the city of Sydney. And now you have protesters walking on that street demanding that there be no development elsewhere where Aboriginals do still live, where lots of them still live, often in third world poverty conditions, and that there be no mines, no farms, no development done in any of those areas. It's hypocrisy on stilts, but it also just limits our country and it keeps us stuck, as you say, in those 5 mainland capitals, not being able to get out of them.
Can I just get you quickly to comment if there's anything you'd like to say or that's interesting to say about the idea of new states? I'm a big proponent that we should have a lot more than 6. I'm happy to start with just 8 or 9, but I think we can go further. Where are you on that, Matt?
Look, I've expressed support for it before. I'm leader of the Nationals Party now, so we'll have that discussion. I'm encouraging my colleagues to be bold, and if you want to get onto One Nation, I'm happy to expand on this. But we've got to be bold. We've got to increase the contrast between ourselves and our political opponents. And so I'd love this idea to get an airing, but I'll have to respect the views of my colleagues as leader, and we'll see where that discussion goes. But look, putting on my hat from mine, or taking off my leader hat and going back to me a backbencher, I, like you, was a very passionate supporter of this. I'd make the point that there are three different parts of our constitution which allow for the creation of new states. Our founding fathers, and they were all blokes in the 1890s, they would be shocked. They would be absolutely shocked to a man that we have not created new states. If you read the constitutional debates, it was just an expectation that this would happen because it happened in the US and we were a growing and developing country, so we would have to do the same as the US did over time. But we haven't. We just didn't. I suppose a couple of wars held things up. There was a vote for a new state of New England in 1967. It lost thanks to some trickery from the Labor Party, who put Newcastle into New England, and the Labor voting area of Newcastle voted against it, even though the rest of New England wanted it, and that saw it go down, and it's never really recovered. Nearly 60 years on now. Next year will be 60 years since that vote, so maybe it's a good time to relaunch the new state movement. I tell you what, there's a lot of passion for it, a lot of receptiveness to it up here in North Queensland. We have 1 million people now north of the Tropic of Capricorn. We actually have a higher per head, per person economic output than southern Queensland. It does beg the question, why would we have such a large state with such massive population bases, economic bases? Southern Queensland's great too. They've got a huge economic base. But why not allow some differences to occur, some competition to occur, as I said, in taxes and regulations, and also, of course, let New South Wales have a crack for a change. I mean, they can't beat us as a combined state, so maybe if we have a tripart state of origin series, they might get a go.
Okay, we've come to the end of the episode, and it's time for my wrap up. I think that Matt has made a reasonably good case for pursuing decentralisation to some extent. So I agree with him about that. I think that our capital cities have probably been favoured by, well, the fact that they are the capitals. There's this historical accident that the capital's in a particular place, and because we haven't then developed other states, that those capitals have attracted a lot of the economic activity. And so I think there is some case for pursuing decentralisation, and that is certainly reinforced by the increasing strains we have on our capital cities with the congestion, the longer commute times, those types of concerns. And that's not to deny the benefits from agglomeration. They're certainly there. There are benefits from having larger cities. However, there comes a point where at the margin that the costs can outweigh the benefits, at least given the existing infrastructure you have in place. And at the moment, I think we're at that point in Sydney and in Melbourne and Brisbane. We just haven't invested sufficiently to be able to cope with the growth that we've had, and hence maybe it is cost effective to look to the regions to try to promote development in those regions. One thing that I won't go back on, I won't change my position on the need to do the cost-benefit analysis when we're looking at a new public investment in the regions. We need to make sure it stacks up. I think too many times we argue, or we see arguments being made that, okay, even though this doesn't strictly stack up in commercial terms, there's a benefit in terms of regional economic development. Okay, that may be true in some cases, but we should be skeptical of it. We should we should make sure there's a high bar to jump over to demonstrate that. And look, in some cases, governments may claim, okay, it's not commercial, but this is there's a community here that would suffer if we don't make this investment, and so we make it in for an equity reason. They need to be explicit about that, and we need to keep track of those investments. We need to make sure that we're not undermining the whole economy because we're having to subsidize all of these regional economies. So that's one thing I think we need to keep in mind. Having said that, I think there is a lot. I think Matt is onto something. I think it's something. It could be a compelling case if he demonstrates that he's thought it through, that they're going to have a process in place to ensure the investments are economic. So, yep, I think the whole Hyper Australia, love the name, love the concept. Let's see how he goes in developing that case and explaining it and trying to convince the Australian people of it. So, good stuff there, and I hope you found that valuable, informative. If you've got any questions for me, if you've got any perspectives on what Matt's saying with his Hyper Australia, then let me know, and I can feature those in a future episode. We can talk about the issues. If you've got any thoughts on any other topical issues, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. You can email me via the contact details in the show notes. And before I leave, I better say that this episode's been sponsored by Lumo Coffee. It's an organic coffee from the highlands of Peru that's rich in antioxidants. You can get a 10% discount. I'll put the promo code in the show notes. So, yeah, definitely check out Lumo Coffee. And again, thanks for watching, for listening. Really appreciate your company. And let's catch up next episode. Thank you.